Hey everybody, my name's Einar. I'm a risk reduction specialist with South Metro Fire Rescue. Today, I'm happy that you're going to join us. We're going to do a Facebook Live session to do a home wildfire assessment at this property. Just earlier this week, we had a wildfire in Parker, what we would consider an urban interface fire. The firefighters followed up and they said that the mitigation that the homeowners did around their property in advance of the fire, of course, made a difference on how that fire grew. And that mitigation actually prevented those flames from getting to one of those homes. Mitigation works. Now, wildfire mitigation does not make your home fireproof. It makes it so that your home can withstand a wildfire that we would consider to be of a low to moderate intensity. And that's why we're not talking about clear cutting. Clear cutting is great if you want to wipe out all vegetation and increase your erosion factor, but that's not wildfire mitigation. Because again, we're not trying to make your home fireproof, we're trying to make it more resistant to wildfire. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And we're going to talk about the structure, we're also going to talk about the vegetation component. So, tell all your friends, get them to join us here, and this will probably last 30 to 40 minutes. We are monitoring the comment section, so if you have questions, please ask. And my partner here, Kim, she will be able to interrupt the flow and ask me those questions so that we can address what you also want to find out, about. So thanks for coming today, and let's get started. First thing I want to talk about is an address. Now the home here is the homeowners have posted their address on the side of their home, the front of their home, which is perfect. However, the way, and this is super pretty and I love it, but it's hard to see what these numbers are from the street. Especially, I would guess, certain times of day, certain times of the year, if the sun is shining on it, or if at night, if the light happens to go out, or if foggy conditions, snow, that sort of thing. What we like to say is, if we, being the fire department, the police department, whoever it is, if we can't find you, we can't help you. So it's so important to post your address with numerals that are this tall, but with contrasting colors. So dark blue on a white background would be great, or white on a dark background would be great as well. So that's the first thing that I would recommend to these homeowners. Make sure that your address can be seen. And quite honestly, let's not even think about emergencies. Think about all those delivery truck drivers who need to know what that address is as well. So post your address well. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk around the side of the house here, and we're going to talk about the home. We're going to talk about vegetation as well. So I like to start when I do a wildfire assessment. And by the way, this is a service that South Metro offers throughout our district. If you would like a South Metro representative to come out to your property and do a wildfire assessment with you, it takes about 30 minutes. It's free. All you need to do is email us at reducingrisk@southmetro.org. See if I can spell that. reducingrisk@southmetro.org. So I like to start with the roof, because ultimately the roof is the most vulnerable part of the house when it comes to a wildfire. And that's because of how wildfires burn through neighborhoods. Typically, we don't have a wall of flame burning homes in a neighborhood. What we do have is a fire off somewhere else, and then the embers, the chunks of burning material, will rain down ahead of the fire and rain down on places. A lot of those raining embers drop on the roof. So that's a large reason why the roof is the most vulnerable part of the house when it comes to a wildfire. These homeowners have a Class A fire-resistant roof up there. Asphalt shingles, the whole roof assembly is made to withstand fire. Now, unfortunately, throughout our district, not just in the classic wildland urban interface area, but also in the more suburban or even urban areas of our district, we have lots of homes where the home has a wood shake shingle roof. That's a bad idea. And I know when the homes were built, that was a way to make the house look more woodsy, more like nature. But I gotta tell you, it also makes the home react to fire just like nature. So as the summer's hailstorms come through, please think about changing out your wood shake shingle roofing and put a more wildfire resistant roof on your home. Yeah, it's going to cost money, but in the end, that could make your home and your family safer from wildfire. So again, the roof is real good here. I can also see up front, I can see one of the gutters. The gutter is another place where these embers are going to land. Now the tree above me here, this is a spruce tree. It doesn't produce a lot of extra needles every year like our ponderosas do. And so I have a feeling there's very little debris up in that gutter. And that's good, because if embers land on dead needles or dead leaves in a gutter, that's another place that fire could start and then ultimately endanger your home. I also like the wood siding here on the home. Now that might seem awkward, that why would I have a home in the wildland urban interface and then have wood siding on it? Well, it turns out that wood siding is extremely fire resistant as long as we don't have a big source of radiant heat right next to the home. And even with the research that was done by Jack Cohen out of the Missoula Fire Science Lab, he was able to do experiments with a raging crown fire 33 feet away from a wood-sided cabin. During the crown fire, the wood siding ignited, but as soon as the bulk of the heat from the crown fire dissipated, which happened after 90 seconds, the wood siding actually self-extinguished. So if we don't have a large source of radiant heat moving laterally from a heat source onto the wood siding is going to protect the house pretty well. And again, that seems weird. If we were standing here taking that heat on us, the amount of time, we would get a severe burn in under 5 minutes. But the home is going to withstand that heat much better because of the way that the wood siding would actually ignite. So, come on, let's go this way. Here we have a couple of aspen trees. Now, typically, aspen trees are a great tree to have along your home, because as most, not all, most deciduous plants, aspen trees are full of water. Before a given fuel can burn, it has to do two things. It has to absorb heat from a heat source that causes the remaining water inside of the fuel to evaporate away as steam. Then the fuel has to absorb more heat. That causes the solid fuel, or liquid fuel for that matter, to evaporate away or to break apart into its gaseous form. And it's those particles of gas that are actually on fire. So anytime we have a fuel with lots of water, like the aspen tree here, or these deciduous shrubs down here, these have so much water in them, they resist the heat from a wildfire. Unfortunately, as you already saw with these trees, these two aspens are mostly dead. And so I will recommend to these homeowners that they remove these trees because they're mostly dead, because they are a risk for wildfire ignition. But ultimately, as we all saw with the high winds that we had in this area last week, these trees, because they're mostly dead, could also collapse onto the house, onto a neighbor's house, or just into the yard. So I'm definitely going to recommend that these aspen trees come out. If they were two completely healthy aspens, I'd say leave them in place. Come on back. Like Mr. Rogers. So here's another fuel that a lot of times we'll talk about the home. We have to remember to talk about other structures around the home, including the fence. So here we have a wood fence, and this wood fence goes right up to the side of the house and joins the house. One of the lessons from the Waldo Canyon fire back in 2012 was that the wooden fence, and a lot of times the cedar fencing, would lead the fire right up to the side of the home. So what I would recommend, if you have a wood fence that goes right up to the side of your home, is change out part of your fence, not the whole thing, just part of it, so that the post that's right next to your home, and maybe the slats leading directly to that post, are a composite material. And fence manufacturers make a lot of great projects so that their composite material will still look like wood. It'll still meet the covenants of wherever you live. It'll look cool. It's not going to be like, gaudy pink or anything, unless you want that. So that will help prevent wildfire or fire from fence getting right up to the side of your home. And while we're here, let's look downward into this mulch. I get a lot of questions on, well, what do I do with mulch around my home? Well, mulch can be a good thing. It can also be a bad thing. It depends on what the fire is doing and what sort of fire behavior we have leading up to the home. Typically, however, putting a mulch around your home, like the ground up wood that we have here, is a good idea because it helps reduce erosion. Now, a given fuel can produce a flame length 1.5 times its height. If we have a 2-inch tall fuel, the flame on top of that is going to be 3 inches tall. So down here, we have a fuel bed that's maybe 1/2 inch or 1 inch deep. We might have a flame length that comes up about this high. Not a problem. As firefighters, our firefighters can get out here, and even the homeowner can get out here with a small fire, spray the fire out, takes care of the issue. The challenge, though, is if the mulch then leads that flame all the way up to the side of the house. So one of my challenges for you is to put your fingers up between the siding and the foundation wall and see what kind of a gap there is. If there's a large gap, or if you can feel the insulation, that's more of a threat, because then you can have the flames in the mulch get up between the foundation and the siding, get behind the siding, and ignite your fire that way, or ignite your home that way. To fix it, there's plenty of sealants that you could get at hardware stores just to fill in that gap a little bit more. You might want to wear gloves when you're doing that, just in case you don't want to find any creepy crawlies up there, any spider webs, anything like that. Just a tip from me to you. So now, these homeowners just have a little bit of, just on this side of the home, one shrub. And again, this is deciduous. I'm not sure what species this is, but it's full of water. So having this shrub right next to their home is a fine idea. This shrub probably will not ignite in a low to moderate intensity wildfire. That's what we want. Another great defense for the home is a green lawn. So a green lawn is where embers go to die. Embers from a fire would come into this green lawn, land. There's so much water down there in the green leaves that the embers they don't have enough heat to cause that fuel to ignite. And I like to say that you could actually come out here and hear them screaming in agony. Of course, you can't do that, but green lawn, manicured lawn is a great idea. And let's look back here a little bit more as well. This is the other side of mulch. So we've got this few of these massive ponderosa pine trees. For those of you who live in a ponderosa area, and these homeowners certainly do, you know that they produce a great harvest of pine needles several times a year, and any time the wind blows. These needles are what we would consider a fine fuel. And that means that they react quickly to changes in relative humidity. So just over the last few days, there's been some pretty heavy rainstorms down here. And yet, with all those rainstorms, these are already crunching up pretty good. They're starting to break. I would say that by this afternoon, these are going to be completely brittle. So we would call this a 1-hour fuel. We could put dead needles, dead leaves, any sort of fuel smaller than a pencil, the diameter of a pencil, into a bucket of water. In an hour, they'd be totally saturated. They won't burn. They won't burn. You then pull those same fuels out. You put them in the sun. You have an air relative humidity that's much lower than a bucket of water. These fuels will react to that change in about an hour. So an hour after a heavy rainstorm, if the sun's out and the wind's blowing, this fine fuel is ready to burn. So my recommendation to these homeowners will be to stay after their harvest of pine needles more often than they are currently. And wherever you see these pine needles, or dead leaves for that matter, piling up around your home, you can see where the wind will eddy in and put the little piles. Maybe you can see it here on the sidewalk. You can see it along the gates or along the fence. Not only does the wind drop needles there, that's where the wind is going to drop embers as well. So those are places to be thinking about doing a little bit of spot mitigation to improve the safety of your home and your family. All right, just a word real quick on these ponderosa pines too. So much of our fire district has ponderosa pines. In fact, we have communities named after them. The Pinery, the Timbers, Castle Pines, the Village of Castle Pines. These are a fire-resistant tree species. They're not fireproof, but they are fire-resistant. They have a thick bark and a low sap content. So if you have ponderosas growing in this part of your yard, even closer to your home, we're typically not going to encourage you to cut them down because they are fire-resistant. We will encourage you, as we'll do on the other side of the home here, we'll encourage you to make some modifications to them. But this is a fire-resistant tree. Let it keep growing. That's not the problem. The problem is, well, I'll get there. I'll get there. I just turned my back on you. I apologize. One thing that all of us can do, regardless of where we live, is register for our county's reverse notification systems. So in Douglas County, where we're at right now, it's Code Red. To register for Code Red, you go to the dcsheriff.net website and follow the links for Code Red. I believe Arapahoe County uses a RAP Alerts. Jefferson County has its own system. And wherever you're watching this from, because you could be anywhere, go to your local county's website, your county Office of Emergency Management, and register your cell phones for that service. What that means is that if there's a countywide, or a neighborhood-wide emergency, the county, the fire department, the police department can notify you that there is such an emergency. It's a great resource. You can get pre-evacuation notices, evacuation notices, other safety issues can all come to you that way. If you live in an urban interface area and you get a pre-evacuation notice for a wildfire, hopefully you have more than just 20 minutes. You need to start using that time effectively. That's not the time to just kind of go back to whatever you were doing. That's the time for you to start thinking about truly getting ready and getting set so that if you need to, you can go. I use those words on purpose because at South Metro, we follow the Ready, Set, Go procedure for preparedness for wildfires. And you can find Ready, Set, Go materials online, actually. So part of getting ready is what we're doing now with the home assessment. Part of getting set, then, is that if I've got time, I can prepare my home for the wildfire's approach. I would want to get all the combustibles off of this deck and put them inside. Anything that can burn. The fake wicker chair, pillows, flowers, these pillows. Some people have awnings up, they'll have carpeting, tables. All of that needs to go inside because we don't want embers landing here after we've made this great investment on the outside of the property. We don't want embers landing on this couch, starting the couch on fire, and then that turns into a home fire when nobody's around to notice it. I mean, eventually we'll notice, but if the wildfire is burning a lot of homes or it's burning a lot of area, we won't necessarily have people patrolling in the neighborhoods to see if individual homes are igniting. So again, that responsibility is going to come on you to really prep your home so that if fire and embers do arrive, your home's going to withstand the event anyway and it'll be just fine. As some of you know, I'm a big guy. I'm not a big guy, I didn't mean it that way. I'm a big proponent of personal responsibility. So, again, we want to move this plant, this sad little plant, hopefully we'll get better. We're going to put this plant inside. But what I do like is that the homeowner has a hose set up. So after moving all these combustibles inside, then the homeowner can actually stretch that hose out a little bit more over to this area. If firefighters need to come here and put out a spot fire, they can use the homeowner's own hose system to do that. Instead of having to drag lines from a fire truck, which then makes them less flexible, less mobile, they can just use the tools on site to help put out that little spot fire. And for this homeowner, some of that spot fire could be coming from that open space. So we picked this home in particular because it is right next to open space. Not all of us are fortunate enough to live next to open space, but we wanted to address this component anyway. For the most part, in our fire district, the agencies or the organizations that own and manage open space do a great job of doing mitigation periodically through that open space. If you have any questions about what's being done, reach out to your homeowners association, reach out to the landowners. So for example, here, this open space is managed by both the homeowners association and Castle Pines North Metro District. And they partner with us, the fire department, to come up with plans on how and actions on how to do mitigation, not just for wildfires, but also for forest health, and in this case, the oak forest health, for recreation, for security, for all those, for ecosystem health, for all those other aspects. That's what mitigation is all about. So this area, it's hard to see now because the green up has just occurred. This area over the last several years has hosted goats. It's one of the properties that was treated by our Ready Set Goat program. That is a function of several homeowners associations, entities within Castle Pines, South Metro Fire Rescue, and Goat Green. Later this summer, we hope to have goats back here again. And the Castle Pines North Metro District also does various treatments in their open space, whether it's mowing, chemical treatments, whatever it is, to make this amazing ecosystem, part of the reason why people live here, more resistant to wildfire. My job is not to prevent fires. Fire is an important part of the ecosystem, especially this oak ecosystem or the ponderosa pine ecosystems. Fire is important. The challenge is that we as humans have put all of our structures in these amazing ecosystems. So the challenge for us in risk reduction, how do we work with homeowners and other stakeholders to make our neighborhoods more adapted to fire, more resilient to fire, so that when fires come through, they burn through the open space and they keep on moving without affecting our beautiful homes, without impacting our families, without hurting our firefighters and other emergency responders. That's the goal. Come over here. This is Gamble Oak. It's also called Scrub Oak. Gamble Oak is the exception to the deciduous trees are okay rule. Gamble Oak has, among other things, it has a resin inside of it that makes it more flammable than other deciduous plants. So all the other deciduous plants that we've seen on their property, totally fire resistant. This is not. It is fire resistant when it first greens up because it's so full of water. But as that water content starts to drop, and especially over the winter in the dormant period, this is extremely flammable. These homeowners are doing a good job with the oak in their properties. They're limbing up. Over time, they're limbing up the branches to about the 6 foot, 7 foot line. What they're doing, we call these ladder fuels. A ladder fuel is a fuel, a branch that lets a surface fire, a fire down here in the mulch, for example, climb into the tops of the trees. That's a problem because firefighters, for safety reasons, can only engage a flame length of 4 feet directly. Anything above 4 feet, between 4 feet and 8 feet, they're using bulldozers, and nobody wants a bulldozer in the neighborhood. Anything above 8 foot, an 8 foot long flame length or more, firefighters are looking at air resources, and that's super indirect. And firefighters can use indirect attack as well, but not in a neighborhood. We're not going to do a back burn in a neighborhood. It's just not going to be effective. So again, these homeowners are taking responsibility, and they're taking out these lower branches every year so that fire cannot get an easy climb up the trunk into the canopy of the tree. Once the fire gets into the canopy, that flame length is so huge they can't engage it, all bets are off. Now, the good news is that this oak is away from the home, but it's close to this tree. And so this oak plant then becomes a ladder for the canopy of these otherwise fire-resistant ponderosa pines. And again, they're fire-resistant, but if there's enough heat down here, this ponderosa will catch fire. And now we're looking at flame lengths in excess of 100 feet. And this one burns, the next one catches, the next one catches, and there's enough heat potential to ignite both homes, which is the scenario we don't want. Now before you, if you have a lot of ponderosa, before you take up all the, what I would call dust or litter beneath the tree, some of it is okay. And it's hard to see here, it's hard to distinguish here because of the mulch that's down here. For the most part, the upper layer of needles can be removed. And then you get down to this more gray layer, and you'll, in a more native situation, you'll get sort of dark brown or even gray needles. Leave a little layer down there. It's like the tree providing its own molt. If you wipe out all of that material, erosion is going to increase. Now, the benefit of taking away all the needles is that these needles are making the soil acidic. So if you take away the needles, you'll be able to grow more things under that tree, like grasses, wildflowers, that sort of thing. But if you want to leave some of it down there to help prevent erosion, that totally makes sense too. This is a problem. This is a juniper. Junipers, we call, in the fire service, we call these little green gas cans. They look cool, they're green throughout the year. The problem is that there's a resin inside of this guy that evaporates rapidly, creates enough fuel that this becomes a raging fire with just a little bit of heat. If you have a juniper within 30 feet of your home, remove it. This applies in the traditional urban interface setting. I would argue it should apply to any home, in any setting. Because the perimeter of our neighborhoods, that's not the only place where lightning strikes. That's not the only place where adults typically, maybe kids, are playing with fireworks, especially as we roll up toward the 4th of July. Discarded smoking materials, a downed power line. Whatever that heat source is, it can happen in any of our communities. We had a fire a couple years ago outside of an apartment complex in our district. The fire started right next to a juniper. The juniper caught fire. The flames rolled up the side of the apartment building all the way up to the 3rd floor. That was not in your typical urban interface, but that was basically an urban interface fire. So any juniper within 30 feet of the home, take it out, replace it with something else that's there's plenty of plants that stay green throughout the year. Manzanita comes to mind. That's the one that comes to mind actually. Dogwood, that's not what I was thinking of, but plenty of things you can replace it with that are not flammable. And we still see these pushed by nurseries, by landscaping companies, by developers, because they look cool. But it's not going to look cool when our neighborhood is on fire. Please remove the junipers. If it's further away from the home, no problem. I mean, in western Colorado, there's junipers all over the place when there's no homes nearby. The other problem with the juniper is that down low, you often get, and I don't see it here of course, you often get a lot of dead material. So not only is it dry and dead, it's also full of resin. You got to get these things out of here. So there's my anti-juniper push. That's the way it is. So something else to mention over here on this side of the house. This homeowner has a wee pile of firewood underneath the stairs. Now during the winter, and I get it, winter can obviously stretch into June here in Colorado. During the winter, having a smaller pile of wood right next to your home makes sense. So you don't have to tromp through the snow to get out to your firewood pile. But during the hotter and drier parts of the year, firewood piles should be away from the home, because you don't want embers landing in there, starting a fire, that then gets up into the decking and gets up into the home. Firewood piles further away. Now, if you live on a slope, any sort of slope, we suggest putting the firewood pile off to the sides, kind of lateral on that slope from your home. If it's above your home and the fire starts, then those rolling logs can roll towards your home, and that's awkward. If it's below your home, too close to your home, then that can help increase the heat, the convective heat that rises, that's affecting your home that way. So more of a lateral sort of position is better. And I would offer the same advice with propane tanks for those of you who live in the areas with propane tanks. That's how I had it when I had a propane tank living up in the mountains at 10,000 feet. So, let's see.
You need a shout out to Caroline for getting rid of her bushes, which I think she's calling meatballs.
Way to go, Caroline. Is that Caroline with a K or with a C?
With a K.
Oh, way to go, Caroline. I think I know who you are. So, nice job getting rid of those little bushes. It's going to make a difference because even though your home is not right next to open space, what we would consider traditional open space, there are vacant lots nearby. So that makes sense. Nice job, sister. If you're not my sister, then disregard that. Anything else come up while we walk around?
No, you're on a little delay, just so you know. But yeah.
Oh, I'm on a little delay.
But that's fine.
Am I out of sync with my mouth?
No, it's just
okay.
Facebook.
Okay. Let's take a look then up here. Actually, you can see, I have a feeling that that wall is kind of blocking the view of the air conditioning unit. So you can see where pine needles have piled up behind that. The wind is moving the pine needles and letting them eddy behind that little fake wall. That's where embers are going to land as well. And what I can't see, and actually, Connor, maybe you can show this little box here. That little box on the side of the house, that's a vent. Now, based on its placement at the bottom of the chimney, I have a feeling it's part of the fireplace. But it's another part of the house. There's probably vents coming out where the dryer is. Now, not only is it important for us to clean out the filter in the dryer every time we use it, not only is it important to clean out the ductwork for the dryer so that the hot air from the dryer and other sources of heat don't cause your home to ignite that way. It's also important that we screen those vents so that when the winds are eddying around the home in a wildfire event, the wind doesn't push embers into the dryer vent. We recommend a 1/8 inch mesh on any vents that are coming out of the house. That still lets air pass through, but it keeps the chunks of burning stuff, and a lot of the critters for that matter, out of the ductwork.
Do you want to talk about, there's always questions about what the zones are, defensible zones. Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, so a lot of, great question from Kim. I don't know if you guys heard that. A lot of material talks about 3 defensive zones around a home. I'm not as big a fan of those 3 zones because the zones, if they're one person or one agency says 20 feet, one says 15 feet, one says 25 feet. Really, the research shows that, Juniper's taking advantage here, right? The research is showing that it's the 100 feet around the house, what we would call the home ignition zone, that most impacts whether this home survives in a wildfire. And depending on your local ecosystem, the topography or the lay of the land, and what your home is made of, those zones might be wider or narrower. So, I mean, there's plenty of resources online, not the least of which, go to our website, southmetro.org. Colorado State Forest Service has amazing resources on wildfire mitigation. Your county government probably has information. Here in Douglas County, they have tons of information on their website as well. Ready, Set, Go is a good group. NFPA Firewise. But it's a good idea to get someone more familiar with your local ecosystem, as we are with South Metro Fire Rescue, to do this assessment or to think about it with you so that you can cater those zones or that varying level of mitigation or maintenance on your property for where you live. It drives me crazy when insurance companies out in the Midwest tell homeowners here, you have to follow these 3 zones. Well, that may work in Cleveland, but that's not necessarily what's best here. Maybe what's best here is more stringent. Maybe what's best here is less stringent. we need to be catering this wildfire mitigation information to this ecosystem. That's what matters. So that's my dodge on that.
Perfect.
I do want to show you though on the side here, before I forget. I'm going to trade places with you, Connor.
Okay.
You can see, I believe those are lilac bushes off to the left. Those are deciduous. They're extremely fire resistant. What I like about their placement, not only are they going to resist fire, but there's also a trail there between the home and the bush. So if you do have deciduous plants right next, or trees for that matter, right next to your home, we also recommend that you prune those branches so the branches aren't scraping against the siding. Now most of that is so that your siding doesn't have any extra wear and tear, but it's also to, just in case they do catch fire, it keeps the flames from going right up against the house. So let's slowly walk and carefully walk back to the front of the home, and hopefully we'll get some other questions, comments, stories, connections.
Do we come out to houses to do assessments?
We do. At South Metro Fire Rescue, we and Risk Reduction are available to come out to your homes to do wildfire assessments in our district. It takes, like I said earlier, it takes 30 minutes and it's free. All you need to do is email us at reducingrisk@southmetro.org, and one of us will be able to, we'll contact you, schedule the event, and then we'll come out and do this assessment. If you don't live in our fire district and you live in Douglas County has an employee who's able to come out and do those home assessments as well. His name is Jim Wattenberger, and he can be contacted through the county website. The Colorado State Forest Service has resources for doing home assessments. Other fire departments have resources, but they don't necessarily have risk reduction specialists committed to just this job like we do. So you may need to be patient, be flexible with your local fire department, but they know the wildfire risk best. Contact them. Great question.
And then we have to give a shout out to Connor, who is videoing this.
Woo!
Way to go, Connor.
Hi, everybody.
You can't see her,
I'm behind the
but trust me,
camera.
she's there.
Einar, I have a question.
Yeah.
So let's say it's someone in a condo, an apartment, an area that is not a full house like this.
Yeah.
Is there anything that homeowners can do on their porch, on their patio, to avoid the similar risks that we've been talking about out here if they don't have a yard?
Yeah, Connor, that's a great question. I live in an apartment building. So we can also apply a lot of these ideas to those balconies or those porches, especially in terms of what we would do for pre-evacuation. If it's time to evacuate, pull those combustibles off of your porch, off of your deck, or your balcony, get them inside. In terms of changing the building itself, it's so important for you to reach out to your landlord and work with the owner, the manager of the apartment property. My experience is that they've been super willing to work with me as a resident to address safety concerns. So really when it comes down to wildfire mitigation, wildfire affects entire neighborhoods. It doesn't just affect one homeowner. So the best wildfire mitigation is a collaboration. It takes a lot of stakeholders working together. If I do great work in my yard, but my neighbor's yard is full of junipers and they're not doing the right thing, both of our homes are at risk. So really it takes all of us working together. Yeah, good question.
Can you talk about what go kits are and what do I do with my animals?
Go kits and animals. Yeah, so a go kit, that's good. A go kit is something that any of us can use for any emergency. It's a pile, a box, a group of supplies, as well as things we want to keep with us, so that if our home does get damaged in the emergency, if it does burn down, if it does get swept away by the tornado or buried by the blizzard, it's stuff that we can bring with us. It's readily available, and we can keep it from getting destroyed. So the big rules I would say for your go kit, and my mask is lovely today, right? The big part of the go kit I would call the 4 P's. Pets, pills, papers, pictures. 4 things that can be hard to replace Certainly replacing your pets, you can't do that. Pills, yeah, you might be able to go to the pharmacy at some point and get your new medications, but it's going to take a while. And if you need that heart medication or that EpiPen right now, it's too late. But don't forget about pets or pills for your pets. If your pets need medications, bring theirs too. Or if your livestock needs medication, bring the medication for your livestock. Papers, those are papers around the house that you can't easily replace. Certainly recommend doing an inventory of your home, as most insurance companies will have an app or a checklist on how to do that. Those papers that if you lose them, it's going to take a while to replace. It might be your marriage license, your title to your car, the paperwork for your home loan, that sort of thing, or your renter's insurance, your passports, your diplomas, all those are pretty important things. And then pictures, photographs. You know, people younger than me, you probably have all your photographs on disk or in the cloud anyway, but I still have boxes of photos. So you may want to take some of those photos with you. And if you have time, if you have space in your car, then you can certainly add more things to your Go Kit. Have it ready. When I lived up in the mountains, I had friends who every summer, basically at the equinox, they would have 3 or 4 big Tupperware bins placed by their front door of all the stuff that needed to go. So if they were out of town, I was taking care of the house, I knew, grab these 3 things and then split. The other thing, if you do have things on disk, or in addition to having them on disk, your videos, your photos, the records, save them off-site as well. So that if something happens here, you'll still have access to all that information. In terms of my animals, if you have enough time, grab your animals in a wildfire situation. If we're talking about a home fire, animals stay inside, let the fire department come in, the firefighters will rescue your animals. But in terms of a wildfire, it's important for us to practice getting our animals ready for an evacuation. In fact, I challenge all of you to do a practice home evacuation that transforms into a neighborhood evacuation. So make sure you know where the leash is or where the kennel is for the dogs and the cats and the lizards. When it's time to leave, maybe you've got multiple cars. Maybe saving the sports car isn't that important anymore because you can hardly hold anything in your sports car in terms of all those pets and all those boxes. Maybe leaving with the El Camino or the station wagon is far more important because it can hold all your stuff for you. If you have livestock, you can work with the county animal rescue teams on a plan. You can also work with us. We can work with you on emergency plans for your livestock. In a lot of cases, just keeping the livestock in their pastures is the best idea. Do not cut the fence or leave the gate open so your animals can just run wild. Because there's nothing worse than driving a fire truck rather quickly down a smoky road and encountering / surprising the driver and that animal with a car versus livestock crash. Leave them in the pasture. Remember, the pasture is going to be smoky, it's going to be scary, but most of the grass in the pasture is going to be pretty short. The flame length is going to be tiny, and the fire is going to burn through there real quick, and then all those critters will be just fine. So, on a lot of other fires, we've had people open up the gates, animals are running everywhere. That's a risk that we don't need, that my firefighters don't need. Did I cover it?
Yep.
Good. Let's walk a little bit. This is bonus points. Now we're talking grad school level. So let's move over here so we're not pillaring you. If it's time to evacuate for a wildfire, lock the front door, leave the back door unlocked. That way if firefighters need to get inside, they can get inside. And they might need to get inside because conditions out here are so bad, they're actually seeking shelter inside of your home. Leave the porch lights on so that firefighters will know that there's a home there. And by putting your porch light on, you're also signaling to them that your family was able to get out safely. Porch light's on, we got out safely, but if you need to come in, please come in. Our firefighters, other agency firefighters, are not going to make a mess in there. They might raid the refrigerator a little bit. It'll be okay. We'll make it up to you. So we can stretch the hose, put the porch lights on, unlock the back door, and then we'll have people patrolling those neighborhoods constantly. Firefighters, police officers, all of us working together. Sometimes people will ask about curtains or window treatments. Now these are blinds, so it's not a perfect example, but if these were curtains instead of these blinds here, if the curtains are more than 5 years old and a wildfire is approaching, you want to open the curtains and just let that radiant heat go through the window. It'll dissipate in the house. If you close curtains that are more than 5 years old, they've got so much UV damage that radiant heat can actually ignite your curtains and start a fire inside your house, even though all this looks great. If the curtains are newer than 5 years, then you can close them, use those curtains to help block that heat, keep the heat outside your house. When in doubt, of course, you can open it, but newer window treatments, they resist that radiant heat far better. Something else you can do, we talked about hoses a couple times. If you have a ladder, like more than a step ladder, you have a ladder in the garage, and you have time during that pre-evacuation phase, you can bring your ladder outside and put it against your driveway, or against your garage door, I should say, if you live in your own home. Then firefighters can use your ladder to get onto the roof to battle any spot fires they might need to get to. Again, that keeps our firefighters mobile, and not all of our fire engines, especially the smaller ones that typically respond to wildfires, not all of them have ladders. So you are providing resources for the firefighters to use. Kim, do we have any more questions?
Well, if you were to think of 3 things that people are like they can do today, the takeaways from today.
3 things.
3 things take away.
3 things. Clean out your gutters. That's probably the biggest thing. Now that doesn't apply to us folk living in apartments, but clean out your gutters, because that's going to be where the easy fuels are for that ember drop. Take away the junipers that are right next to your home. That's going to take a little bit more effort, because fighting a juniper is horrible. Use welder's gloves. Don't go in it with bare hands, bare legs, bare arms. It's going to get messy. Take out those junipers, clean out your gutters, and register for your county's reverse notification system so that you can be better informed when an emergency does occur. I would say those are the 3 things.
We do have a question from Caroline. Can you speak to rooftop sprinkler system?
Rooftop sprinkler systems. Ooh. I don't like rooftop sprinkler systems because they give the homeowner a false sense of security. And you put the rooftop sprinkler system on, it's moving through that water. If you're on a well, it's using up your water quickly. If you're in the city, you're using up water. What you're doing is you're banking on, it's kind of like a foam system on a house. You're banking on that fire getting to your home in a set amount of time. What if the fire doesn't get there for 12 hours? You've now drained your well, so firefighters can't use the water. You've been using city water that maybe could be used somewhere else. And ultimately, if it's still a high fire intensity, what you do around your home for mitigation is far more effective for preventing your home from igniting in the first place. Now, I know that the rooftop sprinklers worked on the Old Faithful Inn back in 1988. I saw it too. That fire was rolling in pretty quickly. Yeah, it worked. But I would not invest. I would rather have you invest in mitigation than a technology that may or may not work on your rooftop. That's my answer. Okay, people. I think we're done then.
Yeah, one shout out to Matthew because he keeps saying hi. So hi,
Thanks,
Matthew.
Matthew. Thanks for
Matthew.
tuning in.
Oh, what do you recommend for bushes in your yard? Pull out the junipers, correct?
Yeah, pull out the junipers. Junipers, and if you have any oak within 30 feet of your home, trim those back or thin them out, ladder them up. Otherwise, for bushes around your home, if you email us at reducingrisk@southmetro.org, we can send you a list of native fire-resistant plants that can be used that are native to this ecosystem in our fire district in Jefferson County, Douglas County, and Arapahoe County. But otherwise, any sort of bush that is leafy or deciduous, in other words, and doesn't have that resin content is ideal. And there's different options if you want deer or you don't want deer. So there's options there too. Great questions. Well, in that case, I guess we're done. I appreciate you joining us today, and visit southmetro.org. Hopefully we'll see you in the next one.